Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Pranzata Podcast. This is your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is episode number 92 on my podcast series on YouTube. I have another guest today. His name is Preston Gitlin. I'm really excited to have him here because he has a very interesting background. He is bilingual in English and Spanish, English being his first language. He has been living in Colombia for the past year and a half, performing stand-up in Spanish. And he also has a TV show there called The Laugh Cure. So I have a lot of questions for him about all this. This is fascinating to me. Before we get into it, if you are new to this channel, please don't forget to hit subscribe below. It is my mission to grow this channel this year, and your support would be incredibly helpful for my mission. And also, as we go along throughout the podcast, I like to hear the opinions of the listeners. Sometimes I hit on some philosophical questions or controversial questions, and it's always interesting for me to hear what the listeners have to say in response to that. So let's get right into that. Okay, Preston. So the first time I met you, we were performing stand-up in the United States in a dive bar in Jersey City. And now you have your own TV show in Colombia. So it's fair to say that life has changed a lot for you since the last time we've been talking. So that's incredible. Explain to the listeners, and you did write to me about it, but I would like to hear it more in your words, or the listeners to hear it in your words. Explain to me the details of what is your TV show, The Laugh Cure.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has been quite a minute. So The Laugh Cure is a show where we have a pool of comedians that we interview everyday people who want to talk about their life struggles, especially with a special focus on mental health. And so the idea initially was just to do a podcast about mental health, just to fight the stigma of talking about it. Gotcha. Especially in Latin America, there's like a huge mental health crisis there. The resources aren't very good, especially public resources. And there's sort of like a macho mentality where no one likes to talk about what's kind of going on the inside.
Gotcha.
So I became friends with a Colombian comedian who has done really well. I mean, he's really well known in Colombia. He has a show on Netflix, a show on Disney Plus. He's got a Comedy Central special, just very successful in Latin America. And we were just talking about mental health and talking about the crisis down there. And I fell in love with doing comedy in Spanish because I had met some comedians who were Venezuelan who invited me to the show. Long story, and I just loved it. I love connecting with that audience. They weren't as politically correct as they were in the States. And I thought that was fun for me because I really like, especially dark humor. And so I was talking to him and we just kind of said, look, let's try to make a podcast or make a show in this space. And we came up with this concept, and we really talk about all sorts of problems. Like we've had guests who are blind. We've had guests with, to a terminal cancer. We had a guest with Asperger's, and then we laugh, we joke, we make improvised humor while we're having the conversation. So the show is very educational and very inspirational, and it's very funny with an emphasis on dark humor and an emphasis on mental health. We have a psychologist that does 3 minutes, not of comedy, but he comes out and just gives us a little bit of education on whatever topic we're talking about. Mm-hmm. It's been a beautiful, beautiful show. The guests themselves love doing it. There's a catharsis that happens where they just feel like a ton of bricks has been lifted off their shoulders because they said, this is just who I am. This is what I'm dealing with. And we don't just talk about the topics. We bring in celebrities from that world who are struggling with these things as well. And it really makes it exciting to talk about our vulnerabilities as opposed to being afraid of them. So now, dozens of people a day write us, excited to share with us whatever they're struggling with. Mm-hmm. So where it used to be, I'm afraid to even admit that I have depression or anxiety or whatever it might be. Now it's like, oh, I have this. I want to come talk about it. And that's really amazing. That's a societal, cultural change in a way, a human change. And that's the crux of why we did it. And that's awesome. In terms of the impact it had, when I first got there, so many people told us it was going to be impossible to do a show like that. We're just not ready for it. And I thought, nah, you're always ready for it because whether you're talking about it or not talking about it, people struggle with mental health issues all the time. Yeah. So we just wanted to give them a place and an identity And we put it out on YouTube. And a week after we launched, we got called in from the biggest telecommunications company in South America. They offered to put it on television. And now it airs twice a week. It's one of the most popular shows down there. We have roughly 500,000 people a week who watch the show, which is crazy because it's a small country. It's a population of 50 million people. So the fact that 500,000 people are watching every week is way bigger than we ever anticipated. And that's so exciting. Mm-hmm.
Is the show in English or Spanish?
It shows totally in Spanish.
So a lot of people don't know this about me. I don't even think I told you this. I have a bachelor's degree in Spanish, so I can speak Spanish. Certainly, definitely, probably not as fluent as you. I probably have the worst Gringo accent of all time, but I can understand everything fluently at the very least. So I'm going to have to give it a watch because that sounds incredible. I haven't known about it until you told me about it. So definitely interested in watching it.
And there's every topic. Like I said, we did an episode on divorce. We have guests who are in a wheelchair forever with all sorts of odd diseases. We just did an episode with a woman who trembles so much. Then it's not Parkinson's, it's not Tourette's. It's just some disease that the doctors still haven't figured out what the heck it is. And she moves like crazy. And she just came on with this uplifting attitude and just warmth about her. And the show was hilarious and it was loving. And it's just a great time to do something like this. I know in the States, everything is so polarized. This show just isn't that. We don't talk about politics on the show at all. It's brought people together from all sorts of backgrounds. People watch it just for the comedy. People watch it because they're dealing with a mental health struggle or they're dealing with a physical health struggle. The older generation watches it. The younger generation, a lot of families watch it. It's a beautiful, beautiful project. It's so hard to do. It's so stressful. Like making a TV show is so hard. The fantasy of it was always there for me since I was a kid. You want to be on TV and you think it's like this easy, glamorous life or something. And it's just been one of the hardest things I've ever worked on.
But I'm sure it's probably kind of worth it after you put in the hours. It's probably worth it to know that you were able to create something that connected so many people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it feels good. It feels good spiritually, I guess, and not religiously. I'm not a religious person, but spiritually, emotionally, in the sense of like, yeah, I'm really happy that I'm doing something with my life that's related to this, but I still have the same underlying problems. Like I still deal with anxiety. I still have depression. I still have self-doubt, really, no matter how good the numbers are. Anytime we have a little hiccup, like my real personality is still there.
It's funny you say that, because that's kind of current with a lot of what I've been thinking about lately. Is I've been studying a lot of I'm kind of going through a phase of my life where I'm like searching for meaning, searching for truth sort of thing. And it's an endless search. I'm sure you know. And a lot of what I'm reading in different religious texts or different meditation texts is you eventually reach a point in life. And again, this isn't true across all religions, but specifically with meditation, people who believe in meditation like Sam Harris, and whatnot. When it comes to that sort of meditation thinking, you eventually have to get to a point where you realize the ups and downs of life are always going to be there. Like finding happiness isn't really going to be in a goal. Like that's pretty much all I've been hearing or all I've been reading lately is goals are nice. What was the quote I heard somebody say, which I thought was a great quote? It was, if you can't find happiness in your cup of coffee in the morning, then you'll never find happiness in your yacht. Which is essentially saying, it's the little things in life that you have to appreciate and find gratitude for. So what you just said makes a lot of sense to me right now.
I believe that entirely. I don't think anytime you're focused on outcome and not effort, that doesn't ever work. Just admittedly, when you have the TV show, it's easier to focus on outcome, unfortunately, because everyone's watching you. I mean, it's just so many people are paying attention to your every move, right? So that makes it, that puts added pressure on it. And you don't want to let these people down. It's like they're looking at the show as a source of comfort for them and a source of hope. And so I don't want to let them down. I will say this. The decision to do the show was less about pursuit of happiness and more about, I wanted to not feel sorry for myself, like related to my own problem. Mm-hmm. So I have terrible anxiety disorder. Like I have panic attacks. I have just dizzy spells related to anxiety. I've had some terrible things happen to me when I was very young that led to those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to take the pain and like take and give it some purpose. Say, all right, look, if I'm going to have this lifelong battle, if I'm going to feel these sad things, I at least want to make something with it. I want to take all that energy, which is energy, and just put it to use and say, all right, got anxiety. What can I do for the world in relation to anxiety? And so that gives you the oomph to do the show. So when I'm having my worst days, I do feel some solace knowing that like other folks that are dealing with this are getting a benefit from it. I know they're getting a benefit from it because we hear from them every day. So that part makes it worth it. It's like, I might as well. But it doesn't eradicate. It doesn't eradicate those things. And there's not like enough success where you go, all right, now I'm good. But that doesn't work. That doesn't ever happen. You have to focus on your underlying issues. And like you said, just enjoy. You have to enjoy the moment, learn to enjoy the moment. That's what anxiety is. It's being stuck in the future.
Yeah.
And depression's being stuck in the past. And
it's funny. I have so many questions that like I prepared for you, and like I'm like, ooh, they like kind of all of them apply to what we're talking about. So I'm like, this is good. I don't even know which one to pick, but I'm gonna go to this one because it applies to what we were talking about. So I'm somebody who also deals with depression and anxiety. But I'm also similar to you that I have like a little bit of that, I guess you could call it alchemist type of attitude where I'm like, I deal with these things. I feel miserable on a day-to-day basis, but I feel inclined to try to find a solution for everything. For you personally, what do you do when you have people in your life who don't share that same mentality? And that's been like a struggle for me. If I have friends or family who are depressed like myself, but they sort of have an attitude of like, everything sucks. It's not going to get better. This is this. I tend to get angry and impatient with those people. And sometimes I'm wondering if that's not the right thing to do. Like, I feel like in the United States, there's especially, I don't really know what it's like in like other places, but there's sort of like a cutoff culture where it's like cut off toxic people, cut off toxic vibes, fuck it. And I'm always like on the fence about it because I'm like, on one hand, I kind of do that, like where I just kind of push out everything that I get angry and irritable with, but maybe on like some sort of spiritual level, that's not the right thing to do. Like, I don't know. So I'm kind of wondering if you've ever had similar thoughts, or what do you do with stuff like that?
I certainly haven't solved that. So I wish I could just give you all these answers. I really haven't. I mean, what I've chosen to do is I've tried to have empathy, think about not what people are doing to me, but why, and then still create my boundaries. So you could forgive someone. You could say, I understand why they're that way. Maybe they've got alcoholism. Maybe they got a codependent relationship, and therefore they've put this other person in front of you, who, even though you need that love, maybe they've lied to you. Maybe there's all sorts of things that people can do to each other. And then you just got to ask, well, what motivated that? What drove it? Probably not personal. It's probably unrelated to you. It's probably related to them.
Yeah.
And then still decide your boundaries. So you could say, look, I understand why this person does that. I forgive them on a human level, but I still just don't really want to spend a lot of time with that person because it ends up bringing me down or just reminds me too much of things. You're allowed to have boundaries like that. I
think that's where I'm kind of in the same place myself with that. That's kind of where I'm at. And I feel like a lot of guilt when I don't talk to certain people. But where I've come with it is like, hey, if I've given enough love and help and I've done whatever I could to a certain point and it's still not getting better, at least I tried. I've done what I could. Now, if I feel like I need to put distance, it's not just random. Like, I really feel like I've tried. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of at the same place too, where it's like, you can have compassion, you can forgive people, understand why they did what they did, but also put up a boundary if necessary,
Yeah. And you can, and I think and again, I'm not an expert, but I think you can lay out your ground rules for a relationship. It doesn't have to be an ultimatum. In a sense, but in some sense, it almost is. That you can say, I think you could say, look, I want to forgive you. I want to have a good relationship with you, but like, here's sort of what I need to make this here's the limit that I can deal with this. Like, I need to see you put a little bit of effort into making this right. I'm willing to forgive this, that, and that, but like, I can't do this. You know, are you cool? Can we do? And if there's just no desire or effort to give at all, and it's sort of like, take me for what I am, or no, you know, it's like, okay, well, then I'm probably not going to want that type of person around.
Yeah. And there's always always room to invite those people back in years if they've changed.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right.
And you can't change people. You know, they're your boundaries. I think what I struggle with mostly is like I'm very judgmental, like on myself and others. I'm very hard on people, and because I get such an emotional response when I feel let down, whether it's via commitment or whether it's via loyalty or whatever it is. That stuff I'm just extra sensitive to, and I think oftentimes people probably don't even think they've done such a terrible thing, you know. But for me, I'm like, right, so. That's something I have to work on as well, just how I let that affect me. Yeah. But it's tough. I don't think it's easy. I think the human factor makes everything hard. It makes a business hard. It makes a dream hard. It makes, your own life and your own ego get formulated when you're very young. So however your parents treated you, it's going to have a major impact on your adult life. And you can rationalize and you can be pragmatic and you can try to, use logic to make everything feel okay. But that ego is built, the foundation. So if you were told when you're really young, you're not capable of something, you're going to hear that voice regardless of how many things you can achieve. That voice is there forever. That's the
craziest thing about like mental health stuff is I consider myself someone who is pragmatic. Like I try to find answers. I try to find solutions. I've been through lots of therapy, but exactly what you said, even after years of analyzing and understanding why I struggle, it still doesn't stop like the feelings, the emotional feelings. And it's like crazy to me. It's like, I know what this emotion is. I know this emotion isn't based on like I know this voice in my head saying, hey, you suck. Like I know why that's there. And I know I could have the power to change it. But that emotion, that it's so powerful. It's almost like a robot that was programmed like with a formula, and it's like waking up from the programming. You can be aware of the programming, but the programming is still there.
Yeah, that's the ego. That's exactly what the ego is. That's the way it was explained to me from psychologists. Was that it gets made, it gets built, it's programmed, and there is no changing it. And some people call it the critic. And it doesn't matter. So that's why there's this misunderstanding that like, if let's say the voice is, oh, you can't be in the entertainment industry because you're not talented enough. You could get to SNL. You could win an Oscar. It won't matter.
You're still going to have those thoughts. You're still going to have those questions. Yeah. As a matter of fact,
I swear to God. Yeah. I mean, I swear to God, I thought if I got a television show, that at least there would be some change. There was none. I mean, zero. Like I'm telling you, I'm giving an honest story about that. I just was like, here it is. And then I was like, oh, nothing. I feel exactly the same way.
I can relate to that with like women's issues. I feel like women, their self-doubt. I feel like men and women are different this way. Like men, a lot of their self-doubt comes to their success and their money. Like that's like, I feel like, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of men I talk to, that seems like their thing. And with women, it's a lot of like beauty. Like, am I beautiful enough? Am I pretty enough? And I can, same exact thing. I can specifically tell you that when I was younger and I struggled with an eating disorder, I wanted to be skinny. And no matter how skinny I got, no matter what compliments I got, like from people like, oh my God, you look great. You're in great shape. It was like in my head, I thought I'm gross and fat. And if I get skinny, then I'll be beautiful. And then I'll never feel pain anymore. Like as soon, and that's why I had an eating disorder, because after I lost a normal, like in the beginning, it was just a normal amount of weight. Like I just wanted to get fit. You know what I mean? I was like, I just want to lose a little weight because if I lose 5 pounds, I'll feel good. And then I won't feel like I hate myself anymore. After you lose those initial 5 pounds, you feel like a little rush of like control. Like I did it, but then, and people compliment you or whatever, then it goes away and then you do it again because you keep searching for you. And like I said, that's how it turned into a full blown eating disorder for me. Cause it was like, I had to literally become like no one was complimenting me anymore. Like after I got so skinny, like they're like, you need help. Like you're too much now. It was better 15 pounds ago. Like you've lost too much weight. So it's like, you might, in your head, you might think like, oh man, if I had the perfect whatever tits or like whatever it is that you want, then I would suddenly feel fulfilled. Like it's in you. Like you're right. It's like a program in you that it's not going to go away. And that line of thinking is probably what drives certain people to become successful. Like you're saying, you can get an SNL show. Probably those people like needed to get an SNL show to prove something to themselves, you know?
Yeah. And a lot of them end up as drug addicts. Many of them died, right? Because again, it may have pushed them to get there, but it didn't do anything for their happiness because they weren't focused on actual happiness. They were focused on the chase. Yeah. You're chasing dopamine. You're chasing compliments. You're chasing money. You're chasing fame. You're chasing the laugh. You can get yourself into an addictive personality by getting your affirmation from outside of yourself, right? That's where you get trapped. Happens to so many comedians, happens to artists, happens to singers. It's just the way it is. And there's also something, they say like happiness is relative, and that's so true. There's something in economics, where I'm trying not to make it too technical, but it works with the human brain as well. And it becomes, once you create your new reality, then that becomes your baseline. And then you need the next thing in order to, if that's what you're living off of those dopamine rushes.
Yeah.
Then, for example, there's like the Preston without the show. And then my day was like on a curve. And then the show gave me a little boost for like a short period of time. I was like, oh, my life is better. And then that became my new reality. My reality is everything plus the show. And now that's me. So the same exact chemicals are being created and released. So it doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah.
But with that said, there are things you can do to be happier, which are totally focused on effort and not focused at all on outcome. So when I was at my happiest, it was when I would fill my day with things I could control. So meditation, going to the gym, eating less sugar. I would put on a little checklist, like makes a stranger feel happy, feel a sense of kindness from me, show some appreciation to a loved one. I had a list of things that I could control. And it was like a habit. I just kept doing it over and over and over again, day by day by day by day. I would get up in the morning. I would get my exercise. I would prepare a healthy breakfast. I would brush my teeth, take a shower, which sounds like nothing, but that's hard to do when you're depressed. And then I would compliment someone. I would do something nice. When I used to do trading in the stock market, I had rules. I would follow my rules trading. Not I would make money or lose money, but I would follow my rules trading. And then the day was over and I felt like I accomplished something, and it just became habitual. And I've never been happier. But what happens a lot of times is you make a choice to create a routine that'll make you happier. You feel happier. You feel like you've been healed, and then you go right back to your poor habits. And that's happened to me time and time again. As soon as I feel good, I'll eat some more junk food, or I'll stop exercising, and I feel like I'm cured or something. It's so irrational.
Yeah.
And anytime I've chased, it's never resulted in me feeling happier. I've chased and chased and chased. I mean, I've lived in 7 countries. I've started different businesses in all sorts of different industries. I finally pursued my dream into comedy and television and accomplished that. And the chasing just never has resulted in anything. It's just so funny. It's so simple. It's like my happiest time was like just super into exercising and eating well and meditating. Like that gave me way more happiness than anything I've accomplished in my entire life.
That's so funny. I feel the same way. Like I have sort of like a dual personality. Like I have part of me is like this go-getter. I've got to get it. I've got to do my podcast. I've got to do my music. I've got to do my stand-up. And I do love all that. Like I do get a thrill in that lifestyle. But then there's another part of me that's like sort of like a homebody that I'm like, I like to cook. I like to read a book and pet my cats and lay in bed. Like that's like the other part of me. And same thing. It's like, I do love all those other things. I do get a thrill out of them. But some of my happiest moments also are literally when like I've cooked a healthy meal. I've shared it with my boyfriend and he likes it too. and then I lay in bed and take edibles and watch South Park and pet my cats. Like those are some of the happiest like moments of my life. You know what I mean? But then there's a conundrum too, because it's like it's sort of like a dual reality, because it's like on one hand, if I do that for too long, then I also get like that feeling of like, I'm lazy, I'm not doing anything. And like, I don't know if that will go away either. So it's kind of like to me, it's kind of like a balance between those two personalities, and chasing your goals, I guess you could say, chasing your goals, but understanding that, like you said, you're not going to find happiness in those things. It's just sort of going to give you something to do while time is passing on this earth, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, that's just a philosophical thing. Like, do we have a responsibility to be productive, or is it just ingrained in us as a survival mechanism? I don't really have the answer to that either. I like to be productive. I like to, I would rather, this is me, but I would rather be creating something than consuming something.
Yeah.
That's me. I don't get as much joy out of buying something than I do of making something. I love making something, but I know people who just have no creative outlet. They don't like creating.
Yeah.
They like working maybe, and they like buying stuff, and they seem to be happy with that. So it could just be a personality thing as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense to just do what feels most natural to you. Like if society is saying, get out there and do it, but you're the type of person who likes to consume and you have no desire to create, then I guess in cases like that, there should be no such pressure to create. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's, it's you hear it all the time with the tortured artists, right?
Yeah.
Like they need to create. I mean, that's my outlet.
I heard somebody.
I can't imagine. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I was going to say, I heard, it's a pianist that I listened to. He said this once, and it spoke to me for some reason. He said that there's no such thing as utopian lifestyle. Whatever lifestyle you live, you're going to have pain. So if you choose to be more relaxed, you're going to have the pain of, am I being lazy? If you choose to be productive, you're going to have the pain of, am I working too hard? And he said for him, it came down to choosing whichever path had less pain for him. So it's like, you're going to have pain in either situation. Which one feels more right to you? Like, are you going to be more tortured by the lazy thoughts? Are you going to be more tortured by the I'm exhausted thoughts? And then that might be like the more appropriate lifestyle for that.
Yeah. And then there's the variable of how does it affect other people, right? Like here's the thing. When I was just day trading, I only worked an hour and a half a day, and I was traveling around the world and, making good money at an hour and a half a day. And then I had the rest of the day do whatever I wanted. I mean, talk about the life, and when I'm doing the TV show projects and creating the content and doing stuff, I'm no longer that. I mean, I'm working my ass off, and it's 7 days a week often. And I definitely was happier when I was doing the trading. Because it was, I had all the time in the world to exercise whenever I felt like it. And I had so much more time to enjoy the day to day. But then I'm like, but it's like, you're not serving anybody. I'm not serving anybody or creating anything. I'm just accumulating cash. Like it's just, I don't know. But now there's this project that is much bigger than myself. Because it does have this impact on other folks. And like, I don't want to give up on them just because I want to, a little bit, I want to like a more leisure life. I mean, at least not right now. I mean, maybe some point, but gosh, I just can't see myself doing that unless the business itself or the project itself just stopped working. That there's a good reason, but like, I just feel like I would be just like leaving all these people behind.
Yeah. After seeing what it's done for them. That's a really good way to put it. It's like, maybe it's not a matter of what feels right for you. Maybe it's a matter of what's going to help society as a whole,
Yeah, I guess it's the mission. I don't know. I just want to say that so many times. I don't know. I'm learning. I'm still learning.
They say that's the sign of an intelligent person, one who admits they don't know anything. That's. I do have some more questions for you about comedy and whatnot. I did want to go back to something you said about the political climate in Colombia being less strict about what you say. I'm curious about that, if you can go into more detail about that with your TV show, because I know, for example, in the United States, it could be difficult to joke about mental health or those types of things. It could be like considered risky. You might offend somebody in the audience. What's the political climate, social political climate like in Colombia in regards to freedom of speech on the media? Do you feel like it's easier for you to kind of just talk about these different topics on public television there, or have you gotten any pushback in that kind of way?
No, it's weird because we've gotten basically none. And I think it's because first of all, we don't make fun of people that are disabled or have issues. That we're making fun of the problem in order to make those folks feel better about life. Right. And so anybody you'd have to be completely nuts to watch that and think that we're somehow, making fun of or trying to do any harm to any of these people that have these things. Yeah. The idea is that we're trying to make them feel normal, that they don't feel like they need to be a victim. We're trying to show people the benefit of laughing in the face of this adversity, as opposed to allowing the adversity to control you. And that's a wonderful thing that we're doing. So we're making fun of the problem, not the person. That's a big one. I think the fact that everyone on the show is dealing with something, it's really cool. Like we start the show and we're like, I'm Preston and I have anxiety. And, Antonio's like, I'm Antonio and I have deficit attention. And I'm Oscar. I have bipolar disorder. And all the hosts and the co-hosts, they come out and they just tell the world whatever they got going on. And so that gives us tremendous credibility. And we've all of us have done an episode on our own mental health or physical health fight. And so we feel we're not like on the outside looking in going like, hey, let's just make fun of this stuff. This is no big deal. Like we're all struggling with it.
I guess it would be different like in the United States if somebody was just doing stand up about mental health problems. It might be different, but when you're involving all these people and they're there talking about it themselves, it's like a totally different type of environment. Yeah,
and I don't know what we're going to try to get it launched in the US in English. I don't know what percentage of the people will find a way to find something wrong with what we're doing. Yeah. I was surprised because coming from the US, I expected there to be some backlash in Colombia, and there's been none. Yeah. And in fact, the psychological community especially has been incredibly supportive. So many psychologists come and watch the live shows, and they're using the show as part of their curriculum now in schools. But you can never underestimate the sensitivity of some folks in the United States. Like I was going to say, it'll be too bad. It'll be too bad, but
I don't have a whole lot of faith in like I feel like somebody in the United States would find a reason to turn it into fuel for their YouTube channel to be angry at somebody. But maybe that's just me. That could just be me being pessimistic. But I just, like you said, based on your history of being from the United States and doing stand up in the United States, you're already familiar with that. I do have another question for you about the Spanish language and doing stand up in Spanish. So I actually recently had a Japanese comedian on my podcast, and she moved to Canada, and she had to learn English, and she started performing stand up in English. What she told me was that I asked her what that experience was like for her, and she told me that it was actually much better because of the way the English language is. She said the sentences were shorter, like the Japanese language was kind of long and flowery. So with the English language, she was able to make like shorter jokes and shorter, more effective punchlines. What has it been like for you starting from doing stand up in English and transitioning to Spanish? Was it more difficult for you, or was it actually easier to write jokes in Spanish for you?
It's both. It's a double-edged sword in a sense. Obviously, the language barrier makes it harder to create comedy, especially not being from that culture. But at the same time, it also, I have a very defined voice. It's a lot easier to have a voice if you're the Gringo doing it in Spanish. So it helps on the voice part, and it's harder on the writing part.
I was going to say that was like one of the pros, I think, with the comedian I'm referring to. Her name is Yumi Nagashima. I think because of her accent, it sort of just adds it just sort of adds something to her jokes, because you just see this like innocent, like cute accent. And then she's talking about like provocative jokes. It's just, that type of juxtaposition just gives it something that I can't create as an English speaker, doing jokes in English. So I would imagine you might have a similar thing going on for you there.
Yeah. There was definitely like a benefit because you stand out. And then it's just harder because there's so many colloquialisms and just local stuff. And then there's different humor that works in different Latin countries. I mean, I did so many countries. I did stand up in Argentina and Chile and Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And everywhere I went, it was a little different. Mexico, just jokes that would kill in Colombia would just nothing in Mexico and vice versa.
That makes sense.
Yeah. There's no such thing as the Spanish comedy. It's really, there's just Venezuelan comedy, there's Colombian comedy, Mexican comedy.
Yeah. Like I was saying to you before, I learned Spanish in college, and I feel like the type of Spanish I learned was very formal. Like it was what you might hear on like a news channel. I think from what I heard, it was similar to like how people would speak in Costa Rica. It was just like very, like there wasn't too much like jargon. Like it was just kind of standard. I took a trip to Uruguay by myself when I was about 27 years old, just to utilize my Spanish that I learned. And what I found was that the accent there was so different to what I learned in school in the United States that I was like, I barely understand what's actually going on here. They had almost like a European, because it was near Argentina too. So it was like this different, it was just like a very different accent than what I was prepared for. After spending a few weeks there, I did adjust to it, but it was a big adjustment for me. It was totally different than what I had studied and like learned on the news and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Well, think about even in English, like if you watch British comedy, it's way different.
Oh yeah.
So we both speak English, but yet the comedy is completely different. It's no different than.
Yeah. Or even like Jamaican, the Jamaican language, like those are a lot of English words just with a really heavy accent. I never realized that. I always thought they were speaking like a whole different language. And then one time I listened like a lot more intently. I'm like, wait a second, they're practically speaking English just with a very different accent. And then suddenly once I like got the accent, I was like, it clicked. I was able to understand. I don't know, for me, I don't know. How did you learn to speak Spanish? Like were you self-taught or did you go
to Costa Rica?
Okay.
Mostly self-taught. Costa Rica. I had a real estate development business when I was 21 in Costa Rica, of all places. And you learn fast when like you're making contracts and losing money.
It's like, shit, let me. I mean, that's really, that's impressive because I feel like as an adult, they say it's harder to learn things. How old were you when you started learning it?
I was 21. I was young because I guess that's young. Yeah. So I had just left college. I raised money from investors and I started developing real estate in Costa Rica. It was very random.
Yeah. I think for me, I had the advantage of, because I'm a musician, I have a good ear. So like I can sort of adapt to sounds and I understand sound, I guess you could say. So I think for me, that was an advantage that I'm just like, I didn't start learning till my 20s. And I was like, I don't think if I was a musician, I could do this. So I feel like that's really impressive that you were able to do that. So kudos to you for that.
And I'm not perfect. I mean, it's weird. Like I learned really fast. I became fluent in 4 months, but then I just stopped getting better at it. And so now it used to be like, whoa, this guy just speaks incredible Spanish. And now it's like, dude, like, when are you going to get it? When are you going to finish? Because I've got like a talk show and I clearly make mistakes in every episode. And there's always fodder and funny that comes from my fish out of water. It's a clear fish out of water thing. And I confuse words. I'm all the time. I don't know. I'm not motivated I'm not motivated to perfect it either because it's become my character.
Yeah. It's almost like you don't want to be too perfect.
Yeah. It's, yeah. There's like an innocence that's very funny. Like I'll say these horribly dark things in the nicest, sweetest tone because I'm just trying to get through the Spanish.
Uni. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Like she'll be saying jokes about like eating your pussy or whatever, like in this like cute, adorable accent where I'm just like, this is crazy. Like, this is so funny to me. All right. Yeah. So, I have a few more questions before I let you go. Okay. I'm sorry for doing this to you, but I hope you enjoy it. I started putting a segment on my podcast called Random Trivia. So I'm going to ask you 3 random trivia questions. Keep in mind to the listeners that I didn't know the answers to these questions. I literally just looked them up today. So I'm no dictionary. This is just, or encyclopedia, I guess you could say. But I did give you trivia about Colombia because I figured, well, this would be a good time for everybody to learn about the country, and you may or may not know these. So my first question for you is, what is Colombia's national symbol? You probably have seen it and maybe don't know it.
Oh, God. National symbol? I don't know. I know it's not Coke, and I know it's not cocaine. So for all Americans, just so you know, I've never seen cocaine in Colombia the entire time I've been there. Just so you guys know.
So from what I read today, if this is correct, apparently their national symbol is a wax palm tree. Have you seen those? Like symbols?
No.
Okay.
No, never.
So maybe what I read was incorrect, but I was like looking up facts about Colombia today, and that was like one of the things. Okay. Maybe this is none of this is true. Second one.
No, it's probably true. I just suck at trivia. Go ahead. I'm probably.
Okay. Next question. What rare endangered? Let me say that again because my accent was weird. What rare endangered species lives in the waters of Colombia? Do you know that?
Are they like the turtles?
Apparently, it's pink dolphins. Is that true too?
Wow, I have heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently, it's like an endangered.
I've never seen one. I thought they were like mermaids. I thought we just made them up, but that's okay. That's great. I'm glad there's pink dolphins. That's great.
Okay. Last question. History. So the history of Colombia. So it wasn't always called Colombia. Do you know what name it was originally called? So apparently the history, it was colonized by indigenous people, and then people from Spain came in, and then they named it something else.
Was it New Granada?
Say it again. You're on the right.
New Granada.
Yes, that's it. You got one. You got one of three correct.
Right.
So I only had 3 questions for you, but yeah, just to review, wax palm tree apparently is the national symbol. Pink dolphins is the endangered species, and New Granada was apparently there was an evolution of other names after that, but that was the first one before it became Colombia. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not great at
I want Americans to know that Colombia is so beautiful and it's really safe. And there's so much to offer in terms of nature. People are very smiley and warm. They're still humans, so like watch yourself because every human is like a threat.
That's actually good to know because when I went to Uruguay by myself, as a single woman, I was kind of terrified. I'm like, where should I go? Where would be the safest place? I had read that Uruguay was one of the safest countries. So people are like, why the hell would you go that south? That's so far away. It was a very long plane ride. It took like 2 days because there was no straight plane ride there. I had to like stop in Panama. But one of the reasons I went there was for that reason. I didn't feel comfortable and safe going to any countries. And I probably would have thought the same thing as an American about Colombia. I would have been like, oh no, I can't go there. So that's actually good to know. I'm wondering if there's like other South American countries that have a similar thing where it's like, it's a lot safer than people claim,
It's odd. I've lived in Costa Rica, which everyone thinks is so perfect, whatever. It's not. There's a lot of like petty theft there.
Yeah.
Whereas in Colombia, I just don't experience any of it. I feel much less worried that something's going to happen to me in Colombia than I ever did in Costa Rica. But it's just marketing. A lot of it's marketing.
I was telling this on my last podcast because because the person I was interviewing was actually from Uruguay, and we were talking about my experience in Uruguay. But for those who didn't hear it, when I went to Uruguay, I found out that it wasn't a high crime place, but one thing you would have to watch out for is like you said, petty theft. Like people might try to pickpocket you and that type of thing. So I went in there like, okay, I'm going to go to this country, like not looking like a target. Like I'm going to go kind of looking tough. So I remember I had an eyebrow ring. I didn't wear anything like feminine or makeup. I wore kind of like tough clothes and like boots, like combat boots. And I remember when I was walking around, people were afraid of me. Like the people who were like walking in front of me, they would like look behind and just like start kind of running from it because I looked that way. And they probably thought, like, I'm sure women do pickpocketing there too. So they probably thought I was something like that. And I was like, oh, I think I took this way too seriously. I mean, like, I didn't, like, I was like, oh, I can't walk around just like being myself. But in hindsight, I totally could have. I could have just walked, in a dress or whatever if I wanted to, But
it's never, I shouldn't say never, but so many times, like, the media just blows stuff out so much. And it's so odd. I was so afraid to go to Colombia when I first came there. That was many years ago. I was terrified. And then I get there and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Wait, what? Yeah. It's weird. It's like, I always get annoyed with tourists.
Okay, sorry, folks. We actually had a little bit of a tech issue, so I had to pause the recording and restart. So picking up where you last left off, if you don't mind.
I was saying that I hate when like American tourists will go to a country, come back after a week of vacation and be like, oh, the people were so nice. It's like, they're still people. And it's just different. It's just how people express themselves. I found living in these 7 different countries that, like, at the end of the day, there are people that are honest. There are people that are dishonest. There are people that are, but you could culturally, people could have a layer of kindness that it seems to be there. Right. But like, what's under the surface of that? Where like you go to New York City, you might think people are assholes, but it's like, they could be really direct. Right. And you can find that they're actually good people. They're just super direct.
That's such a funny point you make, because I never thought of it from that perspective. You can go both ways. You can be like, oh, the people in New York City are assholes. It's like, well, no, you don't actually know what's going on in their lives. There's just so many fucking people here. Like, you can't expect everybody to stop and like have a conversation with you. I remember the first time I went to New York City, I think my aunt took me. I was about 9 years old. I wasn't really given much like prior knowledge about the city, but just as a young kid, the vibe I got, like, I was kind of just like taking in the environment, and I'm someone who likes to like, I like to fit in with the environment, which is maybe why I enjoyed learning Spanish, because like I kind of like to fit in with different cultures. And I remember looking around and being like, oh, so I get it. Here you just have to kind of like rush around and kind of push people out of the way. And I remember I was 9 years old. I just started walking around and like pushing people, like passing the street. And then finally some lady was like, you little bitch. Like, she said that to me, a little kid. And I learned my lesson. I'm like, oh, maybe that's not how it is. But like, my observation was like, everyone's just kind of getting in each other's way, but that's what you do here. I'm like, that's what you're supposed to do,
Yeah. It is odd. Like, one of the things that you'll notice in Costa Rica or Colombia is that people are much more likely to lie. And depending on where you're from, that's either a good thing or a bad thing, because oftentimes they'll lie because they don't want to tell you something you don't want to hear. Mm-hmm. So they've chosen to put the value of, I don't want to upset this person, more than the value of I'm going to be a truth teller. Where so if you could, it depends on how you're raised. I was raised where it's like, you tell the truth no matter what, no matter how painful it is, no matter, you got to be telling the truth. So if somebody is being dishonest, I'm like, I'll take it personally. Or somebody might be being dishonest because they simply don't want to see me upset. That's the funny conundrum.
Mark Norman has a bit kind of about that. I don't know if you saw Mark Norman's special on Netflix. I think he might have 2 specials on Netflix, or maybe 3 at this point. But he has a bit about like, they say being phony is bad, but like, there are certain situations in life where I prefer if you be phony. And he talks about going to a strip club, and he does like an impression of the lady. Like, he's like, oh, I'm just trying to get my kids back. And he's like, no, be phony, pretend you like, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's funny. Like, that's a funny take on it, but it's pointing out exactly what you said. It's like, yes, tell the truth, but there's certain situations where I don't want to know the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough. I don't have an answer for that one either. I mean, it's preference. I personally would rather just know all the facts all the time, just so that I know how to solve problems. It's really hard to do business in a place where the facts are almost hidden all the time. You're making so many guesses. That's very frustrating, right? Mm-hmm. But I also, again, it's like, I know that's not coming from a bad place. It is from certain folks, but there's plenty of people that are dishonest because they simply don't want to hurt your feelings or don't want to cause trouble. And they're not bad people because of it. It's just a preference. And like I said, so I just always thought it was odd when I would see someone come back from a vacation where they've gone to hotels and had great service, and they're just like, oh my God, the people, like, they can just they're so educated on all the people of a said country. It's just not true.
Yeah. Or like vice versa, even if you go to a country where everybody's nice, like it could just be a cultural thing to be pleasant, but like some of those people could have some dark characteristics.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. The only way to find out is to spend enough time and live there. And you find out there's no utopia. There's no place on earth. There's paradise. Does not exist. You know, the greed and selfishness and jealousy and crime, and it's within humans all over the place.
I guess another way to put it, like if you don't want to label the country as the people are nice or the people are nasty or whatever, you can just say the cultural norm is to be more welcoming, like or the cultural norm is to be a little more distant, like in New York City. It's just the cultural norm, but it's not an actual representation of each individual person. All right. I do have one more question here. I've kept you here long enough, so I don't want to keep you here forever. So my last question for you, I do like to throw a philosophical question at the end. I have a couple to pick one, but this is one of my favorites. I hope the audience isn't tired of me asking people, but it's one of my favorites. If you could go back in time to your younger self, what advice, and there could be a lot of different ones, so I guess just pick one, but what's one key advice you would give to your younger self that you know now that you think would have helped your younger self?
God. I would say really, really embrace who you are and pursue that path in life. Because I spent a lot of time afraid to become me or to pursue my happiness in order to make my dad satisfied or make society, other students satisfied or other people my age. Wasted so much time. So it's just, I would be like, hey man, you want to do comedy, you want to do this, just do it and be that person, and don't try to make other people like you. Be yourself and see what type of people want to like you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like if you're the type of person who tries to appease everybody, then what the hell are you? You're going to be a little bit like, there's no way you can't. You know what I mean? There's no way to appease everybody. If you do that, then you don't really have a personality because you're just kind of like a little bit of everything. So,
yeah. And how many times do we see that? I mean, you see that with relationships. Mm-hmm. It's like the dating thing is so funny because both people go on with their best behavior. They put on a facade. And then you have to like take time to figure out what the real person is behind the curtain. Yeah. And oftentimes you're like, I don't like that person. I don't even like this guy that I created. So I just think people should be authentic. Authenticity is a wonderful thing. You're not going to be alone by being yourself. You're going to be surrounded by people who understand you and appreciate you. That's what's ironic and funny about it. You spend so much time trying to get liked and trying to be accepted that you end up not being surrounded by people who really even know you or who care about you, whoever you are.
Yeah.
Because of fear of being rejected, which is just odd because, man, especially the show has taught us, there's just an unlimited amount of weaknesses and issues that people can have.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing.
Yeah. No, everybody has their own story. Everyone's suffering in their own kind of way. Yeah. Even the people you wouldn't think so, even the rich, even the wealthy, they're suffering. Yeah. Even they might have an easier time getting a doctor's appointment or getting that MRI on that problem, but their suffering could be finding lack of meaning in being rich. Like, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't, or they could have deaths in the family. It's like no one is free from that aspect.
No one is immune to life.
Yeah. And I think Sam, I've been listening to a lot of Sam Harris lately. What he said, like in response to that was, at best, even if you have this perfect life, at best, you have to be there to watch all your friends die before you while you sit and wait for your turn. It's like, so there's just no way out, Yeah.
There's no way out. Yeah. The happier you are, the more you have to lose.
Yeah. Yeah. No, good point. All right. So we're going to end the podcast there. I had a great, time talking to you. I learned a lot about Colombia. I learned a lot about your life situation, and I feel very inspired. Before we end the podcast, just a reminder, if you enjoyed what you heard today, Please don't forget to hit subscribe and comment on anything that we talked about throughout the podcast. Share your opinions, share your life stories in relation to what we were talking about. And I will include the link in the, I don't know what they call that section, the section where all the stuff is. Below in the section, I'm going to include a link to his Instagram so you can find him there. And then I'll include a link to where you can also find his TV show if you're interested in watching his TV show. Again, it is in Spanish, but I do have some friends who are bilingual, so you never know. And that's it. Pranzata Podcast, episode number 92. Have a great night, guys. Bye.